Hello and welcome to our 18th edition of FSI Fridays. I'm Johansson live in Charlotte, joined by Edwin in Boston. Hey Edwin, what do we have in store for us today?
Happy Friday, Johansson, and those of you watching live are on YouTube. Today we're going to talk about how workplace insights can be a very valuable asset, especially when there's a change of events and disruption that can affect the way we work. Next, we'll go through some customer use cases and see some cool dashboard demos. Third, understanding actionable change, driving improved workplace habits, and how to measure success and overall effectiveness is key. Then we'll wrap it up with Q&A today on FSI Fridays. So for those of you watching live or on YouTube, as a quick reminder, we'll spend around 30 minutes on today's topic and leave the last 10 to 15 minutes to address any burning questions. So please use the Q&A window and we'll monitor for questions during the presentation. If you're watching the recording, feel free to use the comments below to ask your questions. So let's get started and meet the presenter for today.
Hi Edwin, we're honored to be joined by our Workplace Intelligent Black Belt, Conan Thomas. Thanks for being on the show today. Can you let our audience know what your role is at Microsoft and what your typical day entails?
Thanks, Johansson. Yes, I'm a global black belt in the knowledge and insights team, and I work with our financial services customers.
Yeah, great. That's awesome, Conan. So, speaking of customers, I hear that you actually like to drive on the wrong side of the road and you're into classic cars.
Yeah, my accent's a bit of a giveaway. I'm based in New York, but I like to drive on the right side of the road, you mean? And old cars are a thing, particularly old V8s. So you can often find me doing a little wrench work, listening to 80s music. But I suppose my hair liked the 80s too much because it stayed there.
So Conan, with everything that's going on today, we need to be prepared for disruption. Financial services organizations want to learn from their experiences with COVID. How do we get insights into what happened with COVID so that next time a big disruption potentially happens, how can we respond quicker and be better prepared?
Yeah, I think the key is that customers really wanted to learn from their experience of the most recent impact. COVID was a disruption, but just being more prepared for the next time it happens. What we're really talking about here is that this is more a case of when rather than if. So being able to understand what happened, being able to respond to that disruption that's going on, but then in the recovery and really being able to reimagine using it as an opportunity, just build the muscle so that they're better at it for next time.
Yeah, Conan, I'm sure all of us can relate, responding and that recovery process for me was a challenge, and it seemed to be the same for my friends, family, and colleagues. Many of us are currently or hopefully transitioning to that reimagine phase. As we transition into this work from the work anywhere situation, what trends are we seeing, and why is it important for customers to get insights into what's happening? And how did companies respond to the sudden shift to remote work?
Yeah, so perfectly phrased. So it was a sudden shift. I think that everybody really sort of went home on Friday from the office, and on Monday we were all working remotely. And the interesting thing was it was just across the board. So I don't think we've experienced a scenario like this before. But again, it really did present an opportunity to be able to measure a lot of what was going on with so much of a shift to going digital. But the real impact was that employees bore the brunt of this, and that sudden change of not just a work-life balance, which we sort of have talked about for many years. The reality is that this was much more of a work-life integration. So, being able to leave the office every day and then sort of switch to home life, that wasn't happening. So things like long working hours, we saw 59% of people saying that they were really concerned about burnout. And weekends weren't really a thing either, because in those early days, it was just so much work going on. Managers in particular said that decreased mental health was a major concern for them, as they sort of had to do the work at the weekend because the usual Monday to Friday was just non-stop meetings. So this is unsustainable. Basically, it's fine to do in the short term, but if we just keep on working in this fashion, ultimately there's going to be a burnout.
So Conan, when you talk about how financial services organizations can actually quantify their people working across the organization, that all of this data, the move to digital, it's, creating more of these data points. And I'm sure our organizations are trying to figure out, with this disruption, how effective their people are. So, what's important in determining this effectiveness?
Yeah, so ultimately, what we want to do is we want to look at the patterns of work over time. So if we look at the last year, we can sort of start to understand how an organization works. And ultimately, it's the people that create the value using tools and technology and the way that people work. That's how it all comes together. But if the employees and the teams and the collaboration aren't gelling together, then external stakeholders, as we've called it here on the slide, it's the customers, our partners, our suppliers. So we really need to get to a point of being able to measure how these things work together in a way that honors privacy.
Yeah, no, these are really important components, Conan. So I remember a long time ago, right? We used to get asked these surveys, how things are going, what my challenges are, how effective I feel I'm doing. So if you ask me on a payday, I'll say everything's great. But if it was a rough week, probably not great at all. So I can see how things, this data can get skewed as those surveys are related to that point in time. How do we get the right information in a way that doesn't require people to constantly fill out surveys and provide the constantly changing data on how work gets done?
Yeah, surveys are useful. They give you an outcome. They tell you what people are feeling, but don't really get to understand why. And that's where the power of this data set comes in from workplace analytics. We're processing data that's coming off the Microsoft Graph. So that Office 365 tool that everyone's using, the graph signals in Office 365, we can process those into high value insights. So we've solved for this, and being able to understand really important things that tell us about how can we actually improve our process efficiency. How can we ensure that our teams that are diverse are actually included as well? So really being able to measure and understand how these things work, being able to figure out where the after hours working is happening, and maybe there's some teams that are just being driven at 100% or more all the time. So it's understanding where we need to focus and surfacing those insights quickly and easily without the burden of constant data collection.
So Conan, when we think about the phases or the stages, are there these kind of defined stages on the path to organizational resilience? Like, as financial services organizations are continuing to plan for the future, learning from what the past, can you talk to us about how to best equip leaders to respond to disruptions, and then the different phases to help them grow towards resiliency?
Yeah, so we broke this down into three areas. I mentioned it a little earlier. That responding, so the initial, having to deal with the now, through into more around recovering, which is what a lot of our customers are talking about now with return to office, and then reimagining. So using this as an opportunity. And across these three different areas, so how can we actually protect employee well-being? Being able to look at how different teams that are real collaborators, how they can be prioritized in that return to office program, whereas some people can work remotely for the long term. And then thinking about how do these things work together so we can actually drive better experience from our customer, either customer satisfaction or maybe it's increasing revenue, and that's something that we want to do for those partners and customers.
Absolutely. I can see how this is super helpful, especially when you lay down these three important phases. It would be really super helpful, Conan, if we could go through each one of them and discuss the types of questions financial organizations are asking. For example, work-life balance is a common topic where too little can lead to burnout quickly. How can an organization find and determine the contributors if they started seeing, for example, an attrition problem?
Yeah, I think the first, let's go through respond. So for respond, we're really talking about this scenario was a good example of our own findings. So if you think of Microsoft as customer zero and you go back 5 years, we actually started to process data and found that in our 2017 engagement survey that the amount of time that an engineering leadership team was actually sending information out, it was actually driving a lot of organizational stress. And that ultimately was seen in the survey. So over the period of the year, leadership actually using workplace analytics, they found that if they changed the way that they behaved and didn't send meetings out on Sunday night or didn't drive downstream activities, that they would actually get a better outcome from their team. And ultimately, it relieved an attrition issue as well. So by changing their behavior, they actually managed to get an uptick of 7% between just one engagement survey and the following one.
So Conan, can workplace analytics help determine how employees really spend their time today, and where we can improve and reclaim this process? So can it break down things to how much time do we spend on a process or provide input if that's a determining factor?
Yeah, so when you think about a business process and all of the people aspects of those, you can really sort of see that you can apply this data across multiple business processes. There's always human elements to look at. So if you take an example where you have a very long process that's over multiple days, and it might have all sorts of people and teams involved, there's clear efficiencies to be driven. So yeah, this example is really highlighting that this is actual sanitized scenario here that we actually dealt with. So a process that was running for several weeks, we actually squeezed that down to just 8 days. And typically large meetings that have maybe 20 plus people in them, those are not efficient for making decisions. So by getting that down to a minimal number of people, typically 8 people is a good decision making size. We actually got this process from 70 days or more down to just over a week. And you think about the number of hours that you can recover from all of those people that were in those meetings. That really adds up over time. And this is just one process. When we talk about things like that, we had one customer that dealt with a senior leadership team reporting process. They were going to deal with it for weeks and it actually rolled into months, but never actually changed until they actually added up all of the time that the organization was spending, and it added up to $30 million a year. And they changed the very next day. So these measures really do help.
Conan, those examples are really powerful, especially being able to determine those contributing factors. But once a problem or problems are identified, how do we actually do something about it? I mean, insights are great, but if they're not actionable, what's the point?
Yeah, so we got to move from, if you like, the research and the diagnosis stage. That's great. That gives you the insights, but if it's not actionable, then there's only so much value that you can get. This example here was based on a team that we needed to start changing behavior. So by bringing together workplace analytics and by nudging a change in behavior using my analytics, we're actually able to take this from a diagnostic into a remedy step. So, just this example here, we got 4 hours back per person per week in getting them out of meetings. They had more focus time. So this group liked contiguous working time rather than a fragmented meeting, then some work and then another meeting. So moving all of those meetings into one day, it helped them get better quality of code delivered for their company, big retail customer. And ultimately also dealt with getting happier people as well. So again, dealing with that attrition issue. So this is a great way to actually start that continuous change of do the diagnosis and then apply a change lever with my analytics as one example.
Conan, so you talked about my analytics, and just from my own personal experiences, my analytics has actually given me a lot of insights in terms of how I collaborate with my manager, how I'm collaborating and communicating with my clients and customers. So it's really starting to drive some of my just behaviors around how I think about some of these things.
Yeah, and Johansson, on that point, same thing, right? So I get these cool analytics that tell me how much time I'm spending with a customer and what that could drive. And if that's, it helps me visualize actually, if I'm spending the right time on the right things and who I'm collaborating with. So, really helpful stuff. Conan, again, there's a lot of data that's taken into consideration. Do we need data experts to easily surface that information? And how easy is it to connect these insights? And better yet, can it work with other data sources and analytics tools?
Yeah, so the tool really supports being able to get instant insights. So the whole idea here is to get speed. You want to move quickly, being able to generate those insights. And we've done this with a user interface that you can provide to provide those leading indicator KPIs, if you will. Or you can start to leverage things like Power BI. So remember, the Microsoft platform is rich with tools, so we don't need to jam everything in to be a sort of a single view of the data, or have to do a lot of work to make workplace analytics do a lot of reporting. So Power BI is a great tool. Download those reports; they're instant and out of the box as well. And then, of course, if you want to, if you are the people analytics team or the data science, you can go in and run custom queries. So there's something for everybody here.
This sounds really amazing. I'm not a data scientist, so I'm excited to learn about how this can all be done. And, I love demos. Our audiences love demos. Can you share your screen and show us how all of this would come to life? How, organizational leaders can look at this type of information, drive actionable insights, and really kind of empower their teams and drive some action in an organization?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's take one of those examples of the Power BI report. So there are multiple reports that can be downloaded. They're a template. So as you can see, you bring those down into Power BI. You can use them as is, or you can customize them. So there's a lot to actually leverage here right out of the box. This is the dashboard as it's published. In particular, this one is looking at the business continuity side of things. So leadership are asking questions of many companies. How has that change to remote work really impacted us? How are our employees really sort of handling this, and what can we do to improve? Was a lot of the feedback we got as we sort of moved from a version 1 for a version 2 here. So I'm just going to flip through some screens quickly. So it's answering questions like, how has our life changed? So by setting a point in time here around the COVID disruption, for example, we can start to do a before and after. And remember, I mentioned that when you turn on workplace analytics, you want to get a year, 13 months actually, of history. So at the moment, you can get a full quarter of that sort of pre-COVID impact, the 2019 normal. Looking at which organizations, this is just our demo data, but when you load your data, you'll see your organizational areas, where has it been most impacted? How much additional collaboration time, meetings and IMs and calls. You can even start to sort of get some immediate insights into that work week span. So when was the first event that you collaborated, and what was the last event in the week? And typically that can be Monday all the way through Sunday. So when you look at who's actually spent a whole extra day, that could be a really large part of the organization. But again, it starts to give you insights into where to start looking to remedy those issues. And the same goes for after hours working, really long days, breaking this down by the amount of email and IM sent as well. So it starts to give you the insights of how much time people are actually spending and when. And this doesn't have to be about internal either, because obviously the amount of time that's spent developing those external relationships, we want to make sure that the investment in our important customers and clients are being maintained. And again, looking at how much time is actually being invested there. All the way through now into engagement. And some of the key areas are employees that are the most engaged are the ones that are having regular one-on-ones with their manager. So by getting these insights, we can start to figure out how we can actually make that happen more. And maybe there's some changes that we can do to get those meetings happening. And a big thing here is isolation. So you can just get disconnected because you're working from home. You might be on your own entirely. So those water cooler conversations that used to happen in the office naturally, we want to make sure that they're still happening in those small peer groups that are not necessarily a big sort of planned meeting, that they're happening too. So, and there's lots of other elements here that, and this is just one dashboard. So looking at other ways that we work and insights from teams, they're all available. And importantly, what can we actually do about it? So lots of guidance and next steps. Maybe you want to create a My Analytics focus plan. We can talk about that in a minute. Or maybe it's helping managers set up those one-on-ones with their teams. So it's just a handy way. Yeah.
Yeah, we got a question actually in the chat window. Wanted to bring it up. What if customers are not using Teams, and maybe they're using another meeting solution, or even a chat solution? What do you see, or can this capability from an analytics perspective be brought in from kind of other sources of information, or is this one of the things that is special to leveraging Microsoft Teams in driving employee effectiveness and getting some of this analytics?
No, in fact, you can bring data into workplace analytics very easily, or in fact, export data, if providing you have the right credentials, of course. So that's very straightforward to do. You're still going to have the meeting and email information, and even meetings that are not necessarily Teams, you're still going to see that it's a particular type of meeting as well. So bringing other data sets in is actually a natural progression, and it really helps build that picture up. So yeah, that's something that we do all the time.
Thanks, Conan. I think this is great, right? Like all of these data sources and information, I think it's really starting to show us. But what can customers, this is a really good dashboard. Can customers customize that dashboard and make it their own?
Yeah, so that Power BI template that we saw, you can actually customize that very, very quickly. So being able to change the dashboard, it's Power BI, so it's very quick to just drag and drop or make those changes and republish.
Sometimes one other situation is there might be like traders on the trading floor. They want to be able to understand how they're communicating and collaborating, to help with best practices based on their habits. Is that like a scenario that workplace analytics can help with?
Yeah, so all of that collaboration data is coming into the system. So absolutely, the full collaboration picture is definitely what we're bringing here.
And Conan, I think there's a blog post that might be really helpful for customers to take a look at, has some overview of, what's new and what's exciting. And I think there's some things that we want to point out. Is that something you can share with us? And let's see what we might find helpful for customers.
Yeah, so there's actually our main site. If you go to insights.office.com, you'll find lots of customer stories, and you'll find Harvard Business articles, etc. We've also got a series on home and work, and some of the findings that we discovered through our own experience. But we've also got some really interesting new functionality coming along that really helps to work across those areas that we talked about, the employees, looking at how we can help people with their own productivity. So these experiences are now going to start rolling out into teams directly.
So Conan, we know one of the things that we recently announced was a partnership with Headspace around meditation, right? We're talking all about how we can drive more employee effectiveness, but also just kind of our state of mind is also important. Can you just talk a little bit about that partnership and maybe how some of these things will come to light?
Yeah, so this was really, and if you remember, Satya mentioned it in his keynote as well. This is really about creating a moment to sort of the types of things that we used to do in our commute that don't really exist anymore, because the commute's about 3 steps for most of us. So creating that opportunity, that moment in time where you can just take a step back, think about what you achieved that day, think about what you've got to do for tomorrow, but also just create a little time to relax and meditate, if you will. So Headspace is really being able to help bring that to an experience right within teams.
That's great. And, I think there's some other capabilities in this blog article. We'll be sure to make sure that we include this into the chat window and into when we post this onto our YouTube channel as well. So really great stuff here, Conan.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, there's for managers, there's an insights there, and for leadership as well. So all of those teams' experiences for different areas are in that blog.
Well, that's great. So Conan, one of the other things too is how can organizations preview the data right away? I think I remember on customer calls, it's like there's a way that they can take a look at what might be super helpful and give them some insights right away.
Yeah, actually, so there's put a link at the end. If you're an M365 or Microsoft 365 customer, you can actually go into your admin and run your business continuity report. So this will give you a snippet, some insights into the types of data that Workplace Analytics would show, and useful data there as well. So yeah, I would encourage you, if you haven't used that, to run that, and that's an interesting conversation to have with leadership on taking next steps to improve.
So Conan, how can we turn this into a program of continuous improvement and then be able to kind of track some of the success here?
Yeah, so it's really about sort of creating that continuous improvement wheel. It's iterative, so while this is data led, there are many discussions that need to be happening. There's areas that the data informs, but there are decisions to be made, particularly aligning with culture and things of that nature. But just to take the My Analytics example, you can actually create a change plan within My Analytics. So you've done your diagnostic, you discover there's an opportunity, and maybe there's a particular team that's struggling. So create those plans. Maybe it's something like a collaboration or a well-being plan, making sure that people are taking downtime to recover from the long week. Push those organizational changes out into My Analytics. So while people are still sort of seeing My Analytics and it's only their data, there's a privacy bubble around them, they can see and can compare what their information is like to the organizational goal. So if you think, let's use the Fitbit analogy, for example, if your data is telling you you're doing 5,000 steps, but you really need to be doing 8,000, then there's a change. And of course, you can measure once those changes have been impacted, you can measure in workplace analytics again that the right intent is happening, and you're seeing a positive change.
Yeah, Conan, I mean, this stuff resonates with me, so for example, I know all of us have been in this situation, we're working nonstop and we're always trying to take breaks, but guess what? During those breaks, you get another call or another meeting. So for example, that focus plan thing that you have in there, I know I definitely leverage it to add focus time into my calendar, and it helps block stuff like that off. I mean, this is really amazing stuff, but I'm sure the audience is thinking the same thing I am. I mean, is this Big Brother we're seeing here?
Yeah, this is definitely not an oversight tool. So I definitely would put this is creating insights, and it's doing so in a way that honors the privacy policies of our customers. So the whole product is built up on that this is ultimately the customer's information, so Microsoft has no access to this. We are aggregating data together, and we are de-identifying it as well. So it's really about team dynamics and how different groups work together, rather than sort of diving into the oversight of individuals. And it's built on a trusted Office 365 platform. So all of the controls that you've already invested in here, it's leveraging those as well. So there's many aspects of this that we're only actually measuring metadata. We're creating insights around measures. So if you like, we're creating metadata about metadata. We're not pulling in attachments or the body of emails as well. So customers have the levers and dials that they can change and filter out whatever they need to as well. So there's a lot of options here to make sure that this doesn't become an oversight tool, that it really remains insights.
Conan, this is really great information, and it's really nice to be able to understand that this is not like Big Brother. I'm not being called out. It's not an oversight tool. So how quickly can this information, how that organizations can actually take this information and get some of these helpful insights? How much work is it going to take to actually get started with this? For example, if a customer turns this on tomorrow and wants to get insights from the last year right before COVID started, how long will that take?
The good news is it's quick, typically less than 2 weeks, in fact. So what I would say is, it can be done in a week, but let's just say 10 days to be on the safe side. That there's no end agents to roll out. It takes the same amount of time to deploy 5,000 users as it does to deploy 50,000 users. So with about 4 to 5 hours, I would say, of configuration, literally turning the tool on, and then there's some time to do the data processing. Remember that 13 months of history is going to be available on day one, and then downloading those Power BI templates gets you started. And maybe there's some conversations that you're having with other transformation programs, or maybe you've got a consulting or partner firms that are working as well. So while that's all being aligned, you can be getting dashboards as we showed already. So it's really, really quick and super lightweight.
That's great. So Conan, I want to do a time check. We have, Greg, thank you for asking that question. We also have another question from Karen Anonymous, so let's try to get to it. Conan, I'm sure the audience is eager to test this out. How would you suggest that they get started quickly?
Well, the best way is to reach out to your Microsoft account team. We can get a conversation going, and we really want to align this to a business outcome that you want to drive right now. So this can be really, really effective very, very quickly. So that's the key next step. And then there are many strategic elements as well as the journey to transformation sort of continues.
Conan, thank you for this extremely valuable session. I think our financial services organizations are ready to take these insights and make the workplace even more enjoyable and more productive for all their employees. So what we learned today is with the recent sudden shift for remote work, this disruption surfaced the need to build muscle to respond better and be well prepared. The resiliency of the organizations heavily depends on the health and well-being of their people. Leaders can respond to the disruption, plan their recovery, and reimagine an organization to be even more resilient by empowering them with rich analytics and insights through Microsoft's workplace analytics capabilities. So really great stuff here. Again, if you want to get started on this journey, reach out to your Microsoft account team or fill out our feedback form that we'll share here in a moment. So Edwin, in the interest of time, let's move to Q&A. What are some of our viewers asking?
You got it. I'm going to try to consolidate because we have a bunch of questions coming in. So Conan, Karen asked, how is engagement determined? It's not related to traditional engagement as in surveys, correct?
Well, the combination of surveys, it will really provide a view of what people have been experiencing. But by combining workplace analytics, we can start to understand why. So maybe there's not enough one-on-ones happening. Maybe those sort of small meetings are not really happening either. So being able to figure out where you can actually focus on and in what teams you can actually start to build that engagement up and maybe push out a plan, or maybe it's a learning program. So my analytics is just one example of ways that you can actually sort of start to begin that change.
So Conan, we've got another question in here. This one is coming from Anonymous. Maybe in roles that have revenue or sales attainment, or maybe even spending time with customers, can this information be used or married up to help sales team or even help leaders identify areas of maybe large customer satisfactions or ways in which they can drive higher revenue? Can they tie all this kind of customer facing interaction and maybe even attainment to certain goals and use these workplace analytics capabilities to do that?
Yeah, this is a really interesting area because I think the magnitude of opportunity is that much larger when we're really talking about combining two different types of data. So if we take a CRM data and we combine that with workplace analytics data, we can start to see what are top performers doing differently. So again, looking at that outcome of what are the differences between a team that are retiring quota that have really high customer satisfaction, and then looking at how they work both with the customer, but also how their internal network operates and allows them to get more done. So we've seen examples of $200 and $300 million of revenue uptick just by rolling out a new framework, and even reporting out to sales managers on where their sales teams should be spending more time. So this is a really interesting area, and the opportunities are absolutely massive to adjust and go for larger margin and larger revenues.
So, hey, Conan, everyone, looks like we ran out of time. Thanks again for attending via YouTube or watching live and asking questions. Big shout out to Mac Alarian, who's subbing as our video producer today. Nice job, Mac. If you haven't already registered, aka.msf/FSI Fridays is where you can sign up for notifications and invites. We're also open to constructive feedback. Please send us your comments and suggestions at aka.ms/FSI Fridays feedback. Head to aka.ms/FSI Fridays recap, where you can catch recordings of our previous sessions on the FSI Fridays YouTube channel. You can also get there to post any follow-up questions that we didn't cover today. And please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. So Johansson, we have one more session in October. Why don't you give the audience a preview of what's happening next?
Yeah, thanks. We're wrapping up Outstanding October. On October 30th, we're going to be talking about a really exciting topic around Surface Duo, and actually how Surface Duo can actually be applied in financial services across our different customers. It's a really exciting session. You won't want to miss it. And we hope to see you next time on FSI Fridays. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.